Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this important and very timely virtual event organised by The Economist in the 3+1 format with Cyprus, Greece, Israel and the United States under the auspices of the Hellenic Republic Ministry of Development and Investment and the Cyprus Ministry of Energy, Commerce and Industry, supported also by the CFA Society of Greece. As all of you are aware, this is a very timely event because quite a lot's been happening in the region. And today, as I'm sure you're all aware, Secretary Mike Pompeo of the US is currently in Greece. Yesterday, he was in Thessaloniki with the Greek Minister of Foreign Affairs, Nikos Dendias, where he signed a very important agreement on cooperation, on investment and business with Greece. And today he's with the Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, in Crete, in Hania, and visiting Suda Bay. My name's Joan Hoey, and I'm the Regional Director for Europe at the Economist Intelligence Unit, and I'm your chairperson for today's event. I'd like to thank all our sponsors, without whom this event would not have been possible, and our partners in Greece, in Cyprus, in Israel, and indeed in the US. The event lasts for 4 hours, and we have 5 sessions. I'll aim to run a very tight ship, and I'll ask all the speakers to please stick to the timings, the agreed timings when speaking. Our online audience can submit questions via the chat box. Before the official opening address by Matthew Palmer, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of European and Eurasian Affairs for the US State Department, let me say just a few words to set the scene, in particular about how the COVID-19 pandemic is having an impact on the global economy and regional economy and politics and geopolitics, including in this very important region. So the global outlook is fairly bleak. The EIU forecasts that global output will contract by 5.2% this year. Pre-pandemic, we had forecast global growth of 2.3%. All regions of the world will experience a recession, and few countries will register growth, China being one of those countries where we forecast real GDP growth of 1.7%, which by Chinese standards is obviously very slow. Global growth will not recover to pre-pandemic levels before at least 2022. We think that Asian countries will be the first to recover, some as early as 2021. Major economies will generally recover in 2022 and emerging markets in 2024. We think that Europe and the Eurozone will be the worst affected region of the world in terms of real GDP growth in 2020. We forecast a contraction in the Eurozone of 8.6%. year on year, and that compares, for example, with a contraction of 5.4% in North America, 2.4% in Asia, 5.9% in the Middle East and North Africa, 4.7% in Sub-Saharan Africa. Latin America also has a very steep contraction this year. We forecast negative growth of 8.2%. These forecasts assume that there'll be no further national lockdowns this year, but we do assume, of course, local lockdowns, city lockdowns, and continued restrictions on movement and social distancing measures remaining in place for some time to come. In Western Europe, real GDP will return to 2019 levels only in 2023, which is a slower trajectory than the US, and that reflects Europe's greater dependence on global export demand and a slower structural adjustment. What about Greece and Cyprus? Our forecast is that GDP will contract by more than 8% in both Greece and Cyprus this year, And that's going to wipe out all of the gains that have been made in Cyprus and Greece in recent years. And the main driver of that contraction in Cyprus and Greece will be the sharp fall in activity in the very important travel and tourism sector. We expect that access to these unprecedented EU funds, the EU Recovery Fund that has been agreed over the summer, will lift output and perhaps be a game changer for Greece and Cyprus. Just a few points about possible downside risks and a few maybe upside risks. There is a risk that the recovery will be derailed by a resurgence of the virus in the winter and a sharp rise in hospitalizations and deaths, resulting in the reimposition of national lockdowns, which is not our baseline forecast, as I said, and that could lead to double-dip recessions in some countries. A second risk, political instability risk, and the risk of serious social unrest in many parts of the world. Unemployment is a lagging indicator, and it's likely to peak in 2021. And for poorer countries with little or no fiscal space and resources to provide social safety nets, anti-government protests could erupt. And that's a very prominent risk that we see going forward next year. A third risk is that geopolitical tensions could result in actual conflict in various global flashpoints, for example, between China and India in the South China Sea, and even here in the Eastern Med. And we've just seen what's happened in recent days in Nagorno-Karabakh, in the disputed enclave, where fighting has erupted, very serious fighting erupted once again between Azerbaijan and ethnic Armenian forces there, with the prospect of outside powers becoming involved in that conflict. So those are three downside risks. There are some upside risks. One is that an effective vaccine comes sooner than we forecast. We forecast that it would come by the end of 2021. That's a possibility. There's also a possibility that the virus is significantly less lethal in the winter, and that the global economy bounces back quicker than we forecast. A second upside risk is that the pandemic encourages a radical policy shift, such as government measures to stimulate investment in new productive industries and technologies and in innovation, and to encourages a shakeout of unproductive activity and zombie companies. So could the crisis become or bring about the sort of creative destruction that political leaders have shied away from for decades? And a third possible upside risk, including for this region, is that this crisis has exposed vulnerabilities in global supply chains, and this could open up opportunities for countries such as Greece and Cyprus and others, including in Eastern Europe too, for nearshoring of production.